much for inviting me, and you've probably all gathered that I've got a bit of a sore throat. I'm awfully sorry. It sort of got worse as the day went on. So, yes, exporting. I just fell in love with it. When I went to work for Ciba-Geigy, they put me in all the different departments of the organisation, and after a year they said to me, which one did you like the best? And I just said, oh, the international trade, and that was it. And you know, every day I learn something new, and it still happens now. I like the 17 years, but unfortunately it's been a few more on top of that as well. And 8 years ago I took over at the Institute of Export and International Trade. And we're a professional body that needs to be louder and better at what we do, that was unfortunately run by quite a few old, grey, pale men, who, when I wrote them a marketing plan for the Institute, I kept it quite short and sweet and to the point. And when I handed it to the chairman at the time, he said to me, oh, well, I wasn't expecting anything of this length. I was just wondering where you got those nice golfing umbrellas from. And of course, that isn't what marketing's all about. And so I let them alone for a little while. And then a bit later on, unfortunately or fortunately, they came back and asked me if I would try and help them out. Because, you know, it's an 80-year-old organisation. And sometimes it's easier to start from scratch than it is to actually inherit something quite that old. So one of the things that we do at the Institute is we help people to start exporting. We help people to understand the context in which they're going to be exporting. And we're just there helping. I was telling somebody today that, you know, the government's desperate to get us all to export. And it's as if they're trying to run a circus that needs new trapeze artists. And when they're actually getting the businesses into the circus ring, the businesses are going like, yeah, this is nice, I can get the hang of this. And then they go, right, so all we want you to do is go up there because that's what we need. We need trapeze artists. And they go, oh. And actually the government should be saying, you know what? He didn't start off up there, he started off down here and he worked up a bit and then he did that. And you know what, there's always a safety net. And I like to think of the Institute as a safety net for this sort of thing. The Institute will help you in any shape or form, and one of the things we're going to do this evening is give away a small business membership, which would help you to access our helpline, access some of our training courses, and get to understand how you're going to grow your business, because most businesses that are global, that are international, actually stand a much better chance of surviving. They actually grow quicker, and you know, they understand their product much better. If you're only satisfying one type of person, it's so much easier than it is when you're trying to satisfy a world market. So what I've done here today is I've just put together a few slides just talking about marketing, because yes, we came out of Europe. No, nobody thought we were going to. And as far as international trade is concerned, it's caused us quite a headache. And whether you were pro or anti, it's caused us a headache. And we look at it in a very pragmatic way, that actually there's going to be a lot more paperwork, there's going to be a lot more to do, and actually it's going to mean that people are going to have to actually research things in a lot more detail and understand what it is they're trying to achieve with their business. So with these emerging markets across the world, and there are some great ones, I have to say that the EU never actually stopped us from exporting to any of these. These countries were still there. I know that's a surprise, because I know a lot of people said they weren't, but I promise you all these markets were still there. And now here we are in a situation where we're forced to work with them. So here we go. What I really want you to think about is, when you're a small business, you know what, it doesn't really matter what the GDP of that country is. And it doesn't really matter what market share you're going to get, because actually you're not going to get much. And I don't want to be the first person to tell you that, but when you're first starting out, market share is not the most important thing in the world. But having a market, or being able to identify a market, is really important. So knowing that there's a need for your product, or there's a demand for it, is very useful. So 5 areas that I think are really important. And the first one has to be researching about cultures. And I'm just going to bring a few points up. How do they price them? Is there a demand? What's your trading name? And I think we've all talked about that already tonight. And how would you deliver? So basically, this whole thing about researching the culture, it's not just about, how you hand over a business card. It's about, understanding how they purchase, where they're going to operate, how they buy your product, and whether or not there's an actual chance for you to get your product into that marketplace. And, most importantly, the difference between the markets that you might look at. And it might be a question of you might think about 3 or 4 different countries you might want to work in and work from that direction. I've suddenly realised I'm using Open to Export, which is a project that the Institute of Export has created, which is an open source website. If you just put Open to Export into your search engine, automatically come up, you'll find it's a huge resource that Isabel's been contributing to with her IP centre as well. So that's why it's got that branding on it. The next thing we really need to have a think about is, how do they price their products? Do they negotiate? If you're working in Germany, for example, we all know that they're going to pay on time because we love the Germans for it, but they're going to actually discount as well because they've paid on time. If you work with the Italians, they'll probably discount and take 90 to 120 days to pay because this is life, But this isn't stereotyping, it's actually just accepting that this is what happens in some countries. The other thing that's really interesting, the Germans actually really don't like this whole buy one, get one free thing. They find that quite offensive, and they're saying that, if you can sell it at this price, you should sell it at that price. And they don't get it, and actually they legislate against it. The French legislate against using any other language other than French, which sort of makes sense if you're trying to keep a dead language alive. More importantly, you have to try and think about... I'm not a big fan. I spent a long time learning French. It hurts. And more importantly, we want to think about the attitude towards promotional activity and how we're actually going to really generate that interest and how we're going to keep things simple. One of the other interesting things that I always find is that, of course, the British do have a sense of humour. And, advertising in the UK is a very unique thing. And you have to remember that actually in some countries it's a lot more direct. So let's just use Italy for an example. Italy will tend to have a naked woman draped across something. Doesn't matter what it is. I mean, it could be washing up liquid, it could be, a car, it could be... But they tend to have quite a lot of flesh around. Whereas the Germans will be quite simple about the whole thing. You will buy this. They also like detail as well. I remember producing a proposal for a German company, and I kept it all pretty headline and thought, well, we could talk through the detail of it later on, and they just said quite clearly it wasn't a serious product and they wouldn't be bothering with it. So, let's have a think about these things. So think about what's happening in your own market, and then try and think about whether or not you're having any inquiries. So you've got a website. Simon's told us to have a website. Let's get the website thing sorted out. But actually then you start using the statistics. You start looking at when people are visiting it, what's happening in that. Do you have anybody with any connections in your company that actually can help you? This diaspora that everybody talks about. Use your aunties and uncles and use any relations you've got everywhere, because these people can help you actually get an inside track on what's going on. Now, what's your competition doing? Everyone's got competition, unfortunately. Unless you've come up with the next big thing, invariably somebody's found a solution to what it is you're offering the solution to. And what you've got to do is make sure that yours is different enough to actually make them want to use it. And that type of thing just takes a lot of thinking, actually. It doesn't cost a lot of money to think about it, but it does take time to think about it. And I think something we don't use enough of are the trade associations. They hold huge amounts of data. I'm sure you've got all sorts of research in the library about this, but let's have a think about that. Go to trade associations, go to the exhibitions, and just walk around and get a feeling for what's going on in that marketplace. These are really useful ways of just getting a feel for what's going on, because you can actually then start working out how you can be different from all these other people. And, look at your Google Analytics. And remember, Google isn't the only one available. In some markets, they have a lot of different ones. The Russians have a different ones, the Arabs have a different ones, and of course the Chinese do as well. So it's not just one. And if you're thinking about it, actually don't be skewed by the fact you don't think there's much activity because you're looking at Google, say in China, because you've got to look at Baidu. We've had this lovely thing about the trading names. We've all talked about it, but I have to tell you, think about very carefully. Apparently, zigzag in Egyptian, and the Singer Sewing Machine Company can vouch for this, means something really rude. And apparently, you used to say, you want a bit of a zigzag with my sister. And anyway, so the sewing machines, when they first landed, were actually on the dock for quite some time because nobody would touch them because they were so rude. So find out about this. I think we've all talked about IP and the importance of it. The one thing, if you're going to do anything, is get a trademark, because you can get behind your trademark. It's so expensive getting behind your patents, etc. It can be very, very time consuming, but always trademark when you're going into a new country, because it's a useful thing to do. Just a little bit of a plug there. Open to Export has a lot of information about this sort of thing. And then finally, think about how you're going to get your product to market. Think about making sure that you've internationalized your website. Make sure that you've got international terms and conditions. Make sure you understand what you're committing yourself to, because unfortunately you can make some silly mistakes that could actually mean that it will cost your company quite dear. So just think about that. We're all here to help you, I promise. And and this is just a quick plug for our action plan, which is on the Open to Export tool. You'll find that it will talk you through putting together a basic action plan for going into a new market, and actually whether you're ready to do that. There we are. I'm just going to stop there because I'm pretty sure that I've used up all my time.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Lesley. Thank you very much. Thank you, Lesley. Do you think it's easier for digital businesses to expand into international markets than those companies, say selling physical products in the more traditional sense?
I think their overheads are lower, but I'm afraid that I don't think this is possibly what everybody wants to hear, but people still buy from people. They like to, if you can humanise your website in any shape or form, if you can give it a personality that they can feel that they can relate to, it really does work a lot easier. It depends on what you're selling. It's always the same. I'm always going to say that. It depends on what you're selling. You're selling it.
Now, in terms of Brexit, yes, I'm hoping it'll be a Brexit-free zone. I don't think it can be. Every day someone mentions it.
I tried to brush over that.
Yeah, what impact do you think it's going to have on small businesses and international trade? And what can we do to be more prepared, or is it a wait and see? Because I just get the impression at the moment the government's saying we've got to listen to the people. Well, where's the voice of industry in all of this?
OK, well, I'm just going to unravel some of that. And I think the thing that I don't think came across in the Remain campaign at all was the fact that the money that we pay into the European Union actually is like it's like a Costco card. So you pay your membership to Costco, and then they negotiate good deals for you, and then it makes it much easier when you're going into a new market. So when goods are shipped, they go from the UK into another country. If it's not the EU, if it goes to another country, it'll have a duty or a tariff that it attracts, and it'll also have the local VAT or whatever they call the fiscal tax in that country. So that can add, in some countries, I know I once did some bath sealant, as you do, to New Zealand, and it was 19% VAT, and 20% added duty because it was a product that was already manufactured in New Zealand. So that's almost 40% added to the price of whatever it is you're selling in that market. So you've got to be able to achieve a good price to be able to do that. So now we've got a situation where when we go into Europe, we didn't have to pay the tariffs because there was a lump sum going from the government. And what's happened now is the lump sum that was going from the government is going to be paid by each one of those individual small businesses. So that makes everybody's product more expensive as it goes into that market. So the government won't be paying that, but each of the small businesses will be paying that, and it's going to make their products more expensive in the marketplace.
So that's further down the line, isn't it? How about very quickly, before I open up to the audience, sterling depreciating at the moment. It's expensive to import, but great for exports. But makes it sound easy. Is it as easy as that?
Well, it's only great for exports if you're actually not importing anything.
Raw materials.
Materials. And also, unfortunately, freight is also sold in dollars. So, it is going to start impacting. And I think we've seen this with, heaven forbid, Marmite. And desperate moves on Toblerone, and these are going to really, I think these are highlighting what a lot of manufacturers of other products are facing. So, interesting times. I know, and we all believe fervently that there will be a solution. We'd just like to hear it soon.
What, to the shape of the Toblerone bar, you mean?
Well, obviously important issues like that, but also we were just wondering what was going to happen with Brexit. That's a side issue to Toblerone.
Indeed. But life goes on in the meantime. Obviously, Article 50 hasn't been triggered yet. No. So rules and regulations still apply. We're still under EU procurement laws, EU laws in general.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's going to be great because we've got the Canadian thing coming through, so that means we can all take advantage of trading with Canada. There's some great things we can do in the meantime. And we're also hoping as the Institute that people will start learning how to export and getting the hang of really how to do it properly.
And we're all wondering what zigzag means, aren't we? We're sort of Googling.